It is 161 AD. A man sits alone at a writing table on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. Outside, an army. Around him, stone and dark, and the sound of the camp settling into night. In front of him, a small leather journal. He has been emperor for less than a year. By the standards of history, he is the most powerful man alive. He commands the largest standing army on earth. He administers an empire of 70 million people. He has access to resources that no human being before him has possessed, and most who will come after him never will. And he is writing, in private, in a journal he never intended anyone to read, a reminder to himself about how to live. The reminder begins like this: confine yourself to the present. That journal is what we now call the Meditations. It was written over roughly 2 decades, from 161 to 180 AD, not as a philosophical treatise, but as a personal discipline. A daily practice of applying an ancient philosophy to a life that, by most measures, should have been uncomplicated by the question of meaning. He had everything. By every external standard, there was nothing to want for. And yet the journal reads, repeatedly, like the notes of someone who cannot quite locate the ground under his feet. Someone trying, daily, to find something that doesn't shift when the circumstances do. What makes a life worth living when you cannot control most of what happens in it? Not a rhetorical question. The Antonine Plague arrived in 165 AD. Most scholars believe it was smallpox, brought back by soldiers returning from campaigns in the Near East. It stayed for 15 years. Conservative estimates put the death toll at 5 to 10 million people across the empire. Marcus was simultaneously governing a vast administration, managing wars on the northern border, and watching the world he had inherited deteriorate around him in ways he was, ultimately, powerless to stop. The question of what any of this was for was not abstract for him. It was what the journal was about. If you've ever done everything you're supposed to do, shown up, kept going, been responsible, and still not been able to shake the feeling that none of it is actually pointing anywhere, Marcus Aurelius was asking your question, 2,000 years ago, in considerably better prose. To understand what the Stoic framework was answering, you need to understand where it came from. Not as a list of principles, but as a tradition with weight. Stoicism began in Athens around 300 BC with a man named Zeno of Citium. He had been a merchant, a relatively prosperous one, until a shipwreck off the coast of Greece cost him everything. He walked into a bookshop in Athens, and as the story goes, started reading Socrates. He walked out a philosopher. He founded his school in the Stoipoikile, the painted porch, and that is where the name comes from. The school's central argument can be stated in a sentence, though its implications take considerably longer to absorb. There are things within your control, your values, your attention, your judgments, your choices, and there are things outside your control, everything else. Health, reputation, wealth, what other people do and say, what the world does. The Stoics called these external things indifferent, not worthless, not irrelevant, but not the ground of your worth. The only thing that is genuinely good, on this account, is virtue, the quality of your character and your actions. And that is always within your sphere, regardless of what the world is doing to you or around you. Marcus Aurelius came to this tradition through Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who had died a generation before him and whose lectures Marcus had read as a young man. What Epictetus understood about the dichotomy of control, he understood from a position that went considerably beyond the theoretical. Epictetus was born a slave, somewhere around 50 AD. He had, by definition, no external freedom. He could not choose where he lived, what he did, or what was done to him. His owner, a freedman of Nero, is recorded as having broken Epictetus's leg as a demonstration of power. Epictetus, by the account that survives, said only, "You are going to break it." And when the leg broke, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" Whether the story is literally true matters less than what it communicates about the argument Epictetus was making. He was not performing indifference. He was demonstrating, through the extremity of his actual situation, the one claim the Stoics held to be both true and useful. The quality of your response is yours. Always. Whatever else you lose. The dichotomy of control is typically taught as a tool for anxiety reduction. Stop worrying about things you cannot control. Direct your attention to what you can. That is useful as far as it goes. But Marcus wasn't primarily writing about anxiety. The Meditations are not a manual for staying calm. They are, repeatedly, a wrestling with the question of what is worth doing and why, given that outcomes are largely outside your hands. That is the question of meaning, not the question of temperament. The specific problem the Stoic framework addresses is this. If meaning depends on outcomes, you are permanently at the mercy of things you cannot control. The work that might not be recognized, the relationship that might not last, the plans that the world may not cooperate with. If the ground of your life is out there, in the results, in the external measures of success, then you are always building on something that could be taken from you. The Stoic reorientation is not to stop caring about outcomes. Marcus cared deeply about his rule, about the people he governed, about what he left behind. The reorientation is about where you locate the ground of your care. It is in the quality of your engagement, right now, with whatever is in front of you. Marcus wrote, and this is from the Meditations, Book 2, which is thought to be among the earliest sections he composed. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is not a statement about achieving calm. It is a statement about where meaning actually lives. Not in the accumulated outcomes, not in the external record of what you achieved, but in the quality of the attention you brought to each action, each decision, each person you dealt with. The question shifts, not what do I need to have happen for this to feel worth it, but what is the best version of what I can actually do right now with what I actually have. That shift sounds minor. In practice, it changes the entire direction of the search. Most people spend years looking outward for something that will finally make the present feel sufficient. The Stoic observation is not that the present is sufficient as it is. It is that the meaning you are looking for outward is available inward, in the quality of how you are engaging. And it has been available there all along. Here is the objection, stated plainly. Stoicism sounds like not caring. Like the answer to feeling like your life is on autopilot is to become even more detached from it, to stop wanting things, to treat everything as equally unimportant, to cultivate a kind of philosophical indifference that makes the going through the motions permanent and official. That direction seems wrong. If the problem is absence of meaning, reducing your investment in outcomes seems likely to make it worse. This is the most common misreading of Stoicism, and it has been reinforced by the popular version of Stoicism that has circulated in recent years, which really is about emotional suppression and a kind of performed imperviousness to experience. The idea that nothing should affect you, that the goal is to become immune to feeling. That is not the Stoic claim. The Stoics were not arguing for the elimination of feeling. They were arguing for precision about what you direct feeling toward. Marcus writes about grief, the grief of losing friends and colleagues, and the steady erosion of the people he had known. He writes about fatigue and frustration, about the genuine difficulty of other people and impossible situations. He is not performing emotional immunity. He is working on something considerably more demanding, not letting a passing state become the whole interpretation of his situation. Epictetus, from the Enchiridion, his handbook of Stoic practice. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Not, don't feel. But, notice that the feeling is a response to an interpretation, and the interpretation is yours to examine. The sorrow is real, the frustration is real. The question is whether the feeling becomes the definitive account of what is happening, or whether you can hold it alongside a clearer reading of what is actually within your power. Applied to the drift, the specific experience of doing everything you're supposed to do and still feeling like none of it is pointing anywhere. The Stoic question is not how to stop caring about the outcome. It is, are you actually present to what you are doing, or are you doing it while already somewhere else? Measuring the present against a future that hasn't arrived. Performing the task while already inhabiting the worry about whether the task will produce the result you need. Going through the motions, not because the work is meaningless, but because you are not fully in it. You are in the future version of it, assessing it from a distance that doesn't yet exist. On this account, the drift is not caused by the work being wrong. It is caused by being absent from it. So what does this actually change? Not the circumstances. Marcus Aurelius's world did not improve because he had a coherent philosophy. The empire did not stop being difficult. The plague did not end because he had located his equanimity. The wars continued. The people who disappointed him continued to disappoint him. The grinding difficulty of governing 70 million people with inadequate tools and imperfect information did not relent because he had found the right framing for it. What changed was the question he was asking himself each day. Most people, when they feel the drift, ask, what should I be doing instead? What goal, what achievement, what different situation would finally make this feel like it is going somewhere? The Stoic observation is that this question puts the entire weight of meaning on outcomes that are, at best, partially within your control, which means the meaning is always conditional on what happens next. Always somewhere you haven't arrived yet. The question the Stoic framework suggests is simpler and more uncomfortable. What is the best version of this, right now? Whatever the work is. Whatever the relationship is. What would it look like to bring genuine attention to it? Not because the outcome is guaranteed, not because the results will necessarily follow, but because the quality of your engagement is the only part that is genuinely yours. Marcus wrote, and this is among the most quoted lines from the Meditations, which is worth taking seriously, both as a signal of how often it lands and as a reminder that it keeps being misread. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not a statement about positive thinking. It is not an encouragement to see obstacles as opportunities in the motivational poster sense. It is a more precise and stranger claim. The difficulty you are navigating is not the obstruction to a meaningful life. It is the material of the only meaningful life available to you. The relationship that is difficult, the work that isn't cooperating, the life that isn't going to plan. The Stoic position is not that these are secretly fine. It is that your relationship to them, the quality of your attention, your choices, your engagement, is where meaning gets made. Not somewhere else. Not when the circumstances improve. Now in this, as it actually is. The life that feels like it is going through the motions is not the obstacle to meaning. It is, on this account, the only place meaning was ever going to be available. Back to the campaign table, back to the lamplight. Marcus Aurelius kept writing until approximately 180 AD, the year of his death. He died at Vindobona, modern-day Vienna, still on campaign, still managing the administration of an empire, still returning, apparently, to the questions the journal kept raising. The meditations do not resolve. There is no final entry that reads like an arrival. What we have is the record of a person taking the questions seriously, in conditions of genuine pressure, with real constraints and real losses, for a very long time. Not performing equanimity. Actually working on it, on the days it was available and on the days it was not. Someone after his death preserved those private notes, copied them, kept them. We do not know who or exactly why. We only know that they survived 18 centuries of copying and translation to be read in a year that may be harder than you expected it to be by someone who needed to know that the most powerful man alive was also asking what any of this was for. The Stoic answer is not satisfying in the way that answers are supposed to be satisfying. There is no point at which you have accumulated enough virtue, enough presence, enough philosophical rigor to stop having to work at it. Marcus was working at it the day he died. But there is a reorientation. From, what do I need to have instead of this? To, what is the best I can bring to this right now? From meaning as something stored in outcomes you haven't reached yet, to meaning as something available in the quality of attention you bring to the life you are actually in. The journal is closed. The lamp is still burning. That is not a small thing. If this is what you've been looking for, essays that take the ideas seriously and bring them back to something real, we publish 1 to 2 every week. Subscribe so you don't miss it.